So I've taken a day here to, I guess you could say, get away from it all. Had a day off from work and wanted to come up here to the mountains, up here above Reliance, Tennessee, on the Hiwassee River. Truly love it up here. You know, in this video I've not got any hot takes, or really don't have much of a plan at all for this video except to ramble on about a few different things and perhaps share a couple of what I see as universal truths, universal wisdom, I guess you could say, for our people. But before I get to hiking on the trail a little bit, show you where I'm at here. Some of you that's been here a while, you know, you'll recognize this place. This is the Appalachia Powerhouse. People not from Appalachia, it's not Appalachia, it's Appalachia. I've heard a lot of people from different parts of America call it Appalachia. I want to do some fishing in a few minutes. This is my favorite river in southeast Tennessee to fish at. This is my favorite part of southeast Tennessee. Found me a nice rock to sit on. As I said, I am on the John Muir Natural Trail. John Muir is a very interesting character, very interesting man. He was born in East Lothian, in Dunbar, East Lothian, Scotland, back in 1838. And he has been described as the archetype for oneness with nature. Let me see if there's a deer up here. Let me see if I can get it on camera without spooking it here. Let's see. Go hurry. Okay. Two of them. There's two of them. Two of them are up there. I don't know if you can see. Yes, there they are. There's two white-tailed deer. It's focusing on that branch instead of the deer. Anyways, let them make their way up the river. Let's see. Anyways, John Muir was a naturalist, he was a botanist, he was a zoologist, and he explored, and a lot of his works, he wrote many books, a lot of his works were influential, I guess you could say, in the formation of the national park system here in the United States. He traveled all across North America. This trail here that I'm walking on today, when he was in his 30s, I believe, he had written a book called A 1,000-Mile Walk to the Gulf. He started out up in eastern Kentucky, and he sought out the most rugged, the most wild portion of a trail that he could find. And this very trail here is named after him because he walked along the Hiwassee River here. He started in eastern Kentucky, ended up down in Florida at the Gulf Coast. 1,000-mile walk. Interestingly enough, my great aunt, Laurette, when I went back home to see family for Christmas, she had a copy of this book and she gave it to me. And I'd like to read it here soon. You know, it's hard for me. I have a lot of ideas and things that interest me. I've got a backlog of books that I need to finish reading, but I intend on getting to the book that she had given me for Christmas here soon. Pretty excited to read it. The first, I guess you could say, what you would call wisdom, bit of wisdom that I have for you watching this, is to get outside, is to get in the woods. I've preached on this before. It's good to get out in nature, in the temperate forests, in the mountains, next to the rivers, because this is, after all, our race's, the native Europeans' natural habitat. Like I said earlier, I came up here today to just kind of get away from it all. I have no cell phone service here for many miles. Miranda, sometimes she worries about me coming up here on my own. She thinks I'm gonna fall, bust my head, or get snake bit, which, you know, the chances of getting snake bit right now are practically zero. Like I said, it's only about 38, 37 degrees. All the snakes are hibernating, they're in their dens. There are timber rattlers and copperheads up here. This river is called the Hiwassee. It's a Cherokee word. But before the Cherokee came to this area, the Muskogee Indians, I believe, were here. And they called this river, I'm not sure what they called it, but it translated to Copperhead River. So I'm sure there are plenty of venomous snakes around, although in the 2 years I've been coming up here, I've never ran into one, luckily. But you know, it's very good for our people to touch base with our roots, you could say. You know, I hear a lot of our guys say things, you know, we need to reclaim the cities. I'm not really into that sort of thing. I could care less about the cities. It's completely unnatural. It's civilization, you know. We are over-civilized. And you know, a lot of times like this, I like to think of my ancestors, the ones that were alive in my lifetime. They're all gone now. All my grandparents have been dead for many years now, almost 15 years. You know, and I think many of us probably do this as well. You know, I like to measure myself against, say, my parents, grandparents, great-grandparents. I like to compare myself and to these old-timers, you could say. Although, you know, I know as far as toughness goes, I'm sure that I fail miserably. I also wonder too about these old timers, my great-grandparents, grandparents. I wonder how they would have operated in these times, you know. Just some food for thought, I guess you could say. Like I said, this is rambling. You know, the other day, week before last, my father's best friend passed away. They were the same age. His name was Rick. He was a good man. He had a real infectious sort of laugh. I hadn't seen him in a couple of years. He passed away though. He was my father's age. He's only 62 years old. My father's best friend. They had been best friends probably since 1976 when they met each other. Sad about that, you know. My dad was a pallbearer at the funeral. My dad, we were talking about this some last night, and he said that, I asked him, I was like, well, was Rick okay? You know, like, was he complaining of being sick or anything when you last saw him? And Dad said no, he was fine, he was his normal self. Dad said he last seen him about 3 hours before he passed away. They were sitting at a store back home, out in the parking lot, talking to each other, old country store. And Rick's like, well, I've got to get to town and get me some dog food, and I'll see you later. 3 hours later, he passed away. You know, we really never know when our time is coming up, you know. And really in life, you know, there's, I guess this is the second bit of wisdom, I guess you could say. Really in life, there's only, as I see it, 3 things that are for certain. And those 3 things aren't necessarily all that good. The first one being death, second one being taxes, I suppose, and then the third one is struggle. You know, we don't have to struggle a lot anymore due to this over-civilization, it seems. It's like our struggle is not so much a physical one, it's more of a spiritual one, I guess you could say. The struggle is, in a lot of ways, within us. And it's a very unnatural thing, I guess you could say, but this is what we have been dealt, and this is what we are dealing with. Something else that I'd like to add here that I forgot to mention. Like I said, you know, these 3 things that basically the only things guaranteed in life are, as I see it, are struggle, death, and taxes. Maybe we could deal with taxes one of these days if we ever win. So maybe that's not one of the certainties, you could say. But for now it is. Anyway, what I was going to say is, I don't think it's good for us too to waste time dreaming of some sort of utopia on Earth. Because, you know, I hear a lot of communists, you know, they have their ideas of, you know, some sort of communist utopia. And I think perhaps even our guys might be sort of susceptible to this sort of pipe dreams, I guess you could say. You know, and I don't think it's good to waste time dwelling on such things, because nature, after all, is struggle. And that we should embrace the struggle instead of dreaming of some far-off utopia that will never arrive. We should embrace the struggle. And you know, that's why I think it's extremely important for our people to get out in nature, to go outside. Don't sit shut in all the time. Don't sit online all the time. Don't consume tons of content. You know, there's time. I consume content, and there's time for that. But don't forget to take time to get out here, to get back to your natural habitat. It helps keep you sane. I've noticed. I've learned this over years. It's good for you. Helps you reflect. And you see some beautiful things. Going back to John Muir, like I said, he was Scottish. His family immigrated over here in 1849. And as a young boy, I think he was the 3rd of 8 children. And his father was very strict, very stern. His father, like I said, actually I don't think I mentioned this yet, John Muir, he was a Presbyterian. And his father was very strict. His father held the opinion that if time is wasted if it's not spent, you know, studying the Bible. He was very strict, very stern, while young John was a rambunctious young man. He liked to fight a lot when he was a child. He liked to reenact the old border wars between the lowland Scots and the northern English, which had went on for centuries. He liked to reenact these, he liked to fight. He was very rambunctious. And he also developed a very strong love of nature. You know, he was a Presbyterian himself. And instead of, you know, it is said, I read about him, he had allegedly memorized through all of his biblical study, I think 3/4 of the Old Testament, and he had memorized practically the entire New Testament. And you know, myself, when I started this channel, I was anti-Christianity, you could say. I have a pagan worldview, after all. I believe in reincarnation. A lot of my spiritual beliefs, I'd say they fall in line with some of the stuff that Varg Vikernes and Vegard Solheim have written books about, spoke about. That's my opinion. But you know, over time I'm not so much anti-Christian anymore. Because over time I've realized, you know, both paganism, European polytheism, and Christianity is ingrained in our people, you could say. I do consider paganism to be our people's true nature. I mean, after all, the word pagan, I believe, is derived from paganus, or paganus, which was, you know, the Latin word for the rural, people who lived in rural areas. And when Christianity came into Rome and other parts of Europe, it started out, you know, in the larger cities, such as Rome, more urban areas, you could say. But over centuries of struggle, you know, a lot of the pagan tribes of Europe, especially Northern Europe, you know, they were eventually converted. But it is undeniable, though, that paganism lived on, in my opinion. As one of my friends has said before, paganism is really our true nature. And I agree with him, you know, being out in nature, not being shut in a city. But going back to John Muir, you see, he was, you know, basically forced when in his youth to study the Bible a lot. But he developed a strong love for nature and reverence for it. And when he came to America, he went all over this continent. Like I said earlier, he walked this very path here when he was in his 30s and wrote a book about it. He also went to the Sierra Nevada mountains. He traveled up to Alaska, I think, on 4 separate occasions. And although he was Christian, I think it's undeniable that he had some of this pagan spirit left in him. And in his writings, he said that he came to find nature, being out in areas like this, was as close to the truth, the unadulterated truth of God, that a man could get. And I agree with this. You know, our pagan ancestors had their gods. Christians, you have your God. We both believe, you know, in some sort of divine purpose, and that there is, you know, a higher power. Whether, you know, we believe in one God or multiple gods. We acknowledge that we are just a part of something greater. So, you know, I don't really consider myself so much anti-Christian anymore. I have Christian friends, I have Christian family, but, you know, it's a part of our people. Both of these worldviews are part of our people. It's undeniable. And although, you know, I have my quarrels still with Christianity, you know, I have my opinions on it, I acknowledge that it's part of our people, it's part of our history. But I think Christians should understand too that paganism also is part of our people. I'm not interested in a lot of these religious debates, to be honest, anymore. Because as I see it, you know, our people, we have a lot more pressing concerns. Definitely. But yeah, John Muir, he's a guy that's worth looking into. Ansel Adams, the famous natural photographer, thought most highly of John Muir. He was also, his nickname was John of the Mountains. And his journeys, his writings, his thoughts, you know, are things that we can learn from. He's a very interesting guy, and I cannot wait to read his book. Let's take a walk back down. Set my camera back up here, or at least fold it up, the tripod. So like I said, excuse me. Have to rack these up here. It's like I said, this is our race's natural habitat after all. Native European. Perhaps also, you know, if you go back into the distant past, also the steppes of Eurasia. We are a very adaptable people after all. We've spread across the world. You know, during the age of exploration, back in the, I guess you'd say, 14, 15, 1600s. We're a very adaptable people. The European diaspora spread all across the world. But I mean, you go back even further in the past, the distant past. We have the Aryan diaspora, you could say. So lastly, my advice is get outside. Go fishing, go hunting, or even just go for a hike. It'll help clear your mind, and it'll put your soul at ease, in my opinion. So remember to take time for that. Absolutely. Thank y'all for watching. Bye-bye.